Do you recognize these spikes that are used to keep the birds away from roosting in a building and commercial spaces? These are the same tactics that the government uses to exclude homeless people from public spaces.
You heard echoes.
Fundamentally, our societal structure seems crafted to render the lives of the underprivileged uncomfortable, shielding the affluent from guilt. But what if this concept extends beyond mere abstraction? What if it permeates our surroundings, insidiously infiltrating commonplace elements like the train station used for daily commutes, the seemingly benign public restroom, or even the park bench where one occasionally takes a lunch break? Could these elements collectively contribute to upholding the divide between the privileged and the less fortunate? Enter the realm of hostile, or in essence, defensive architecture, an omnipresent phenomenon particularly conspicuous in urban landscapes. Take New York City, for instance. Over the past decade, the city has intensified the implementation of design strategies that weaponize public spaces against the homeless.
So this looks like a metal covering for the subway vent, which is underneath it. At first I thought it was a bench, but you can really only sit on this corner of it. You'll notice that the top of this is incredibly uneven, and then there's these raised ridges which are on all 5 of them. And what happens if you try to lay down on it? Is that even possible? Oh, that is like the most uncomfortable thing I've ever experienced. This ridge right here is going into my spine, and that's on purpose.
Some subway stations and bus stops have eradicated benches altogether, replacing them with leaning structures. However, these are just minor examples of defensive architecture. More egregious instances abound in New York alone. Consider the deceptive installation of string insulations on subway ventilation covers and storm grates in Queens, purportedly aesthetic benches for public rest. Yet, their design lacks aesthetic appeal and comfort, hindering the homeless from seeking warmth on the grates. This design choice seemingly prioritizes keeping the destitute out of sight, even if it means risking their lives in the cold over allowing them to find solace on a sidewalk. These instances epitomize numerous cases where city planners employ modern architecture against the homeless, exemplifying a broader trend. Venturing through the streets of any first-world city unveils other manifestations of defensive architecture, such as metal spikes on windowsills or doorways to deter loitering, random arrangements of boulders or inconveniently placed bumps under bridges, fencing around heat sources, and public resting areas, segmented too small for average adults, all attest to the same principle. Governments prioritize concealing poverty rather than addressing it. The logic seems to be that if homelessness is hidden from public view, it ceases to exist in public consciousness. By pushing these marginalized individuals to less visible, less hostile areas, authorities believe they are enhancing the living experience for the affluent residing in wealthier neighborhoods. This is not a novel concept. The roots of hostile architecture can be traced back to the aftermath of the 1848 Workers' Revolution in Paris. During the revolution, the proletariat impeded the military with makeshift barricades. Consequently, the redesign of Parisian streets involved replacing narrow alleys with broad boulevards and open spaces, aiming to thwart future rebellions by preventing citizens from creating blockades. In 1980, Langdon Winner, a political scientist, recounted a captivating yet disconcerting tale of American urban planning. He illuminated the intentional design of bridges spanning the parkways between New York City and Long Island, a scheme conceived by Robert Moses, a prominent figure in New York's public renovations. Deliberately constructed with lower than usual clearances, these bridges barely reached 3 meters from the curb. Moses, recognizing that low-income communities heavily relied on public transportation, aimed to discourage the impoverished from using the parkways. By restricting the passage of buses, which measured 4 meters in height, Moses effectively confined economically disadvantaged individuals within the city limits, allowing the more affluent, who predominantly used automobiles, unrestricted access. Remarkably, Moses's discriminatory planning went largely unnoticed during his lifetime, as the seemingly innocuous design of the bridges concealed their nefarious intent. Winner's insight is as poignant as it is profound. Even seemingly benign elements of the urban landscape can be wielded as powerful tools by the politically motivated. Enduring structures made of steel and concrete can silently perpetuate systemic biases. Moses's influence over both the physical and political systems of New York City serves as a striking example of this trend, illustrating how cunning designs can shape political landscapes for generations. Thus, the genesis of the term hostile architecture.